I'm Alexis Webster, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm a program manager at NCCJ Greater Dayton.
Hi everyone, I'm Adrienne Miller. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the executive director at the National Conference for Community and Justice of Greater Dayton.
And I'm Lake Miller. I'm the director of education with the NCCJ of Greater Dayton.
So I work as a diversity trainer because I think that it's important for everybody to be able to not only celebrate the differences that we have, but to also see the value in it. Some of the strengths that I bring to the table, someone else might not have, and the strengths that other people bring to the table, I don't have. So we get to learn and pour into each other and really grow from one another.
I think we're all here because we have a passion for it. One thing to mention too is that both Alexis and Lake are products of our youth leadership programming, and that work had a lasting impact on their life, that they wanted to come back and continue this for the next generation.
Yeah, that's what I did too. Anytime makes so much impact on me, so I went to do it in Korea.
Yeah. Yep. It's so hard to pick just one social problem, honestly. I think the biggest thing is helping people to feel comfortable to be themselves. I think that covers a lot of different things. So creating places where people can be their true, genuine selves.
I don't think it's to us to solve the social problems personally. I think that we have a job of creating agents who go out and solve those problems, right? And so when I go to work every day, I am not seeking to end discrimination, like to actually do the tangible work of changing the laws or X, Y, or Z, right? I'm creating agents who go out and do that. It would be impossible for our office in Dayton to eliminate racism. It would be impossible for us to eliminate homophobia or any of these things, right? It's just not possible. But we can create a network of people who make very substantial change in those things. And so, for me do I have my own areas that I'm really interested in? Sure. But as we approach this conversation, I think really our goal should not be saying I'm most focused on this social issue, but rather to say I am really focused on creating people who, whether they are passionate about race or they're passionate about gender or they're passionate about disability or whatever, that the skills are the skills are the skills. And whether you apply them to race or you apply them to disabilities, the skills that we teach apply broadly. And so to me, I think, it's really about establishing that next generation or that even current generation of people who are going to go out and they're going to do that work.
For me, the motivation is the kids. Seeing, especially in our week-long programs, seeing the difference from when the kid comes in on the first day to how they leave on the last day, just inspired and transformed, is really what motivates me. And seeing them being passionate about creating change, and kind of to Lake's point, seeing them being passionate in creating that change in their environments.
I think it's not just the kids that we work with. We do workplace professional development as well, and we can see the change happening with the adults that we work with. I think we talk about all the time that we don't know what we don't know. So if you've never had conversations about some of these topics, if you've never met somebody that is of a different religion or a different race or ethnicity, then you only know the little bit that maybe you have heard along the way. So helping to open people's eyes and raise awareness and see, literally see that aha moment for them when that light bulb turns on and I never looked at it that way. I think that's pretty awesome.
Me too, I like to see the changes in their mind and feelings. That's my motivation. After you heard a little bit about what's going on in South Korea, what did you think you went to this?
I think the sad thing is when we look at issues happening all around the world, none of these things are unique, right? What's happening in your country is maybe not exactly the same as what's happening here in the US, but there's strong parallels between all of this, right? And so I think that what to me stands out after that conversation is that there's essentially a worldwide attack on this work, right? And we're seeing it absolutely here in the United States that, this quote unquote attack on wokeism, as people like to refer to it here in the US, but it's that's essentially kind of what's happening there, right? And at the end of the day, we know that diversity and inclusion work is like good for people's mental health, it's good for your business, it's good for all of these things, but there's a lot of fear. And from what I heard you talk about in your experiences, a lot of this is rooted on fear of the unknown, fear of, if I say X, Y, or Z, how are my friends going to feel, or how are my consumers going to feel? And so at some point we have to move past that fear. I do think that we've had some businesses here in the US who have done a really awesome job of saying, like, we're going to say the right thing, and if people don't like that, oh well. But we've also had really huge businesses here in the US who are like, we're going to say the right thing, and people got mad and they were like, oops, we didn't mean that, right? And so I think there's just really strong parallels, and not that gives like any peace or consolation to like what you're doing, because I think it just shows that like the issue's big, and the issue is not an American issue or a South Korean issue or whatever. It's a global issue, and I think all of us need to band together to solve it. I think honestly, to me, like all of this at the end of the day comes down to communication and relationships. If you know somebody who is X, Y, or Z, you're a lot less likely to hate somebody who is X, Y, or Z, right? I mean, we've seen that in our own, we're from Ohio, and like we've seen that in our own legislature, where like we have legislators who have always voted on anti-LGBTQ acts, and suddenly someone in their family is gay, and now they're open to the topic, right? It's like, it's really easy to not understand bigotry when you haven't seen that bigotry. It's really easy for someone to say racism doesn't exist if they don't know any black people, right? Like if they've never heard someone say, this is how racism affects me. But once you have that person you care deeply about say, hey, this affects me, then suddenly you're like, well, I don't experience that. That's not fair, right? And so to me, I think at the core of all of this, right, it's like we can understand the history of redlining, we can understand the history of race, we can understand, all of this stuff. But if we also don't have the communication and the relationships, that stuff's all kind of worthless, right? Like we have to be able to talk to one another. And talking to one another is not always easy, right? I mean, like I'm a white man, and I have a lot of conversations and see a lot of other white men who are like, they really don't want to have these conversations, right? Because that conversation is not easy for them, and that conversation may be uncomfortable for them. And so like, I love to say like, discomfort is growing pains. And so like when we're uncomfortable, we need to lean into that discomfort. But for a lot of people, when it becomes uncomfortable, it's really easy to be like, see you later, this has been fun, and go on their way. But with those relationships, with stronger communication, we learn to lean into discomfort, and that's when things change. But I believe that it doesn't matter how much education we have. If we don't have relationships and communication, things really are not going to change.
Like who should take them?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody. Our organization, we focus a lot on youth, but we also work with adults. And it's really interesting with some of our youth programs, Anytown. When we tell adults about Anytown, we have adults, some of them will say, I wish they had that when I was a kid. And we have other adults that say, I want to go through that now. Yeah. So I think we have, everybody needs to go through diversity training. We still go through diversity training. It's one of those topics that's constantly evolving, and our understanding changing. The way we ran Anytown 10 years ago is different than the way we run Anytown now. We're much more trauma-informed in the way that we're doing things. So everybody, every single person, because the reality with our lives are we're really busy doing other things. So when we take time to be intentional, to talk about these topics, to have that conversation about things that are uncomfortable, that's when we have time to grow and learn. It's too easy to do things the way we've always done them. So everybody needs to go through it.
I think it's important for environments to do that, because if you're not intentional about being inclusive, then it's very easy for you to become exclusive. If you don't make sure that you're making that effort to make sure everybody feels like they're welcome and valued, and I can actually, get in this building, then it's very easy for things to fall through the cracks, and people don't get the services and the basic needs that they have met.
I think along with that, is that when people feel like they belong, whether it's in school or work, they're going to do better. You know, people that feel like they're a part of the culture of somewhere and can be seen for who they are going to work harder. The classes that I had professors that I really connected with are the classes that I did really, really well in. I wanted to show them. And employee, you know, jobs that I've had when I really enjoy my supervisor and feel like I have a connection with them, those are the jobs that I work harder in. So being able to do that, we'll have a better outcome for everybody by doing that.
Yeah, schools and companies, right?
But yeah, everywhere, anywhere that people can be themselves. Even relationships within families can be stronger if people can do that, because we hear it all the time that when I'm here, these are my pronouns, but when I go home, I have to be referred to as this. And that's hard for people, and that impacts people's mental health.
Right.
So everywhere needs to focus on that.
I'll say, just keep fighting the fight. You might not see it immediately, but the work that you're doing, you will see the results. And if you don't, then someone along the line will. It's kind of like throwing a little pebble in a pond. You see one ripple, and then you start to see the waves. So just keep fighting.
I agree. I think it's never easy being that first group that's trying to create change, because for so long we've been doing things the same way. Change is really difficult for people, but when you are that person to speak up in whatever way you feel comfortable speaking up, whether it be in a one-on-one conversation with somebody or facilitating training, you have that ability then to create that safe space for someone else, for someone to learn something, to see something from a different perspective, and for them to pass that along. So keep doing it. It's hard. Reach out for support. We're here to help. You know how to get in touch with us. So keep in touch, ask questions, schedule Zoom meetings with us. Yeah, we can grow and learn together. So you don't have to be alone. There are other people doing this work that want to help and support you.
And I would just say, the statistic is somewhere around like an LGBTQ kid has one trusted adult who's affirming their chance of suicide decreases by like 40%, right? Like just one trusted adult. And so I think it's really easy when we're looking at a topic that's so enormous to really think like, am I making an impact? And it's so easy just to think we're not, right? And I think that we sometimes have to look and be like, wow, that's all it takes. One person in that kid's life could entirely change the trajectory of their life. I think there are a lot of people who want to say right now that DEI work is bad. The DEI work is whatever, words they use to describe it. And deep down in our heart, we know that that's not true, right? But those voices are very loud. But for me, the way I like to look at it is like, I'm very confident that one day, many, many, many days from now, I'm going to be sitting in my deathbed and I'm going to be able to look back at this work and say, I did everything I could to make the world a better place. And so that is not going to come without challenge, but that's to say, like, don't give up the fight. There are going to be people who are going to say all sorts of nasty things. We're going to pass policies or laws that seem like they're major steps back for what we do. But I think somewhere in your gut or your heart or whatever, if you know that at the end of the day, you're going to die peaceful because you know that you made a difference in the world, then you're fighting the good fight, and keep on fighting that fight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for this opportunity.